Hey, how is it going, everyone? This is Yoan, and today I have a cool wall hanging project to share with you. This is another form of improv quilting, so I love improv quilting. It's so much fun and it's very liberating. And this time we will work with the quadrant shape or quarter of a circle. So the curves are much deeper, but don't be afraid, it's actually pretty simple. The finished measurements of this wall hanging project is approximately 30.5 inches by 30.5 inches. So it is a square wall hanging, and the measurements of each block is 8 inches squares. Feel free to use as many colors as you want. You can go bright and bold, solid or pattern, or you can do more minimalistic approach by using perhaps only 2 or 3 color depending on the mood that you want to bring into the room. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and without further ado, let's get started. Prepare 16 pieces of 9-inch squares, 8 light colors and 8 medium or dark colors. You may use your favorite scraps or whatever fabric that you have left over, or anything that you might have in your stash. Take fabric A and lay that right side up, and then take fabric B and lay that right side up, just like that. Take your rotary cutter and make the quadrant shape cut somewhere from the bottom left point up to the top right point. Simply make the cut and don't think too much. You can make the cutting as you like, however I recommend to leave at least an inch allowance on both the bottom left edge and the upper top right edge. We're gonna call the inner panel or the quadrant panel as fabric 1 and the outer panel as fabric 2. Swap the layout of fabric A and fabric B. So you want to pair panel 1 of fabric A with panel 2 of fabric B and vice versa. Now let me set aside the other pair, and then I'm going to demonstrate how to sew these pieces together. With your fabric marker, you're going to mark around the center of panel 1. It doesn't have to be precise, just eyeball and estimate. And you're going to mark the same spot of panel 2 as well. Lay panel 1 and panel 2 right side together. You want to match the center point mark and then pin them in place. Now we're going to sew starting from the center down to one of the end, and then we're going to start again from the center down to the opposite end. I'm placing my needle right on the center point mark. Of course, we're going to sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. As you can see, I'm using my 1/4 inch foot here. And then start sewing, aligning the edges of the fabric as I go. So you may have to stop every so often and realign your fabric. As you sew, try not to pull either fabric so they won't get distorted. So simply take your time, keep sewing, following the shape, and aligning your fabric. Now as you get to the bottom, if you notice that your panel 1 is kind of short, don't panic, just leave it that way. We're going to trim this block eventually anyway, so don't worry about that. Alright, now I'm going to sew the other side. So again, I start from the center point mark. So this time I've got panel 2 sitting on top, and we're gonna do pretty much the same like before. So I'm going to go ahead and sew, aligning the edges, simply following the curved shape. Once you've done sewing, go ahead and press the seams towards panel 1. Now go ahead and trim your block to measure 8 inches squares. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and make 16 blocks. Again, when you make the quadrant curve cut, no need to think too much about how big or how deep the curve should be. So do as organic as you could possibly do. Now, if you're having a hard time to lay your seams flat, you may clip the seam allowance a little bit every an inch or so. Although I didn't really do this for my blocks, they seem to look fine without having to clip the seam allowance. Alright, once you've sewn all 16 blocks, you can go ahead and lay them out just like shown here. You may follow this layout exactly, or you can improvise a little bit and change the layout the way you want it to. So do as you like and what pleasing your eyes. Once you're happy with your layout, go ahead and piece your quilt blocks together, one row at a time. And of course, we're gonna sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And then press the seams of each row towards opposite sides so you can nest the seams nicely when sewing the rows together. Once you've sewn the blocks of each row together, now it's time to join them one row at a time. So my quilt top is done and ready to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and layer this with the batting and the backing fabric. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the machine quilting. I free motioned this quilt with pebbling design around the quadrant shape, and since this is gonna be a wall hanging, I wanted the quilting texture to be rather dense. I quilted brick design around the panel too. I think it really adds a nice accent to the quilt. Although my quilting isn't always perfect, but I kind of like the organic look that it looks like somebody actually hold the quilt and really work on it. Alright, so once you've done quilting, you can go ahead and bind your quilt according to your favorite binding method. If you make your own binding, you will need 4 binding strips for this project. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing and quilting project. Goodbye!